Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of the Golden Age. This is a series that is dedicated to Warhammer Fantasy 8th Edition Battle Reports, and this is Battle Report number 129. It is a 3,000 point battle that is fought between High Elves as well as Lizardmen. My friend Freshman's Belair is bringing House Lainel, the Silvery host of Caledor, a 3,000 point High Elves army, and I'll be playing the Lizards of Waaaghz, my 3,000 point Lizardmen army. So in case you're tuning in for the very first time on this Battle Report series, what is happening is that I have recently completed a 3,000 point Lizardmen army, and what I'm doing now is I'm taking this army through its paces by having it face off against every single army within our studio's collection to see exactly how it stacks up. So on today's episode, we're taking on High Elves, and we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we'll show you photos of both armies as well as their rosters. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this Battle Report, you can take a pause and take a look at your own leisure, or look down in the description box down below for a list, on both army lists listed down below. So that being said, let's get this Battle Report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Alright, so the scenario rules for this one is Battle Line. It is the most typical game of Warhammer Fantasy that we play on this channel with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. So now that we have the scenario rules over, let's go and talk about battle plans as well as deployments. Alright, so here's a battle plan of the entirety of the table. As you can see, we're playing on a 4x6 table. I'm deployed on the near side of the table, while my friend Freshman's Belair is deployed on the far side of the table. And pretty much the tactic for me is actually pretty straightforward. I am playing a Lizardman army. Lizardman army do very, very well when it comes to using magic, so that's why I'll be focusing most of my offensive, long-range offensive capabilities on. At the same time, I'm also just going to move across the battlefield as quickly as possible in order to charge against the High Elves, so that way I can engage them in close combat. I have better strength and toughness than my opponent does, so I should really have this in the bag. Pretty much what I plan on doing is basically kind of going for like a 3-point attack. I'm using my flankers with my Osaurus Oilblood on a Connoisseur, as well as my Bastillodon and my Colwyn Knights to kind of go from the left-hand side and attack that direction. Meanwhile, using my Skinks in order to whittle down my opponent's right-hand flank, and then finally pushing down the middle of my Temple Guard, as well as my Source Warriors to kind of destroy his infantry forces all the way on the other side of the table. Now, I am kind of worried about this battle report, and the reason why is because my opponent, Freshman's Belair, does have 3 Eagle Claw Blowthrowers in his army, one on each of the towers on his side of the battlefield. So I do have my work cut out for me to make sure I try to keep my Connoisseur alive as long as I possibly can, and hopefully get close enough to do close combat with them. So with the battle plan out of the way, let's go and talk about deployment real quick. So starting off on my left-hand side for the Lizards of Waaaghz, Vanguard up forward up 12 inches. These are the Charizards. They're, 3 Pterodon Riders. They have Fire Leech Bolas, and pretty much their plan here is just to kind of harass my opponent's left-hand flank and hunt down War Machines for the most part. So moving on to the left-hand side of the battlefield, on the left-hand side there I have Gatorade as well as Powerade. Gatorade is a Saurus Oilblood. He's got a shield as well as Fencer's Blades, Glittering Scales, as well as a Talisman of Endurance. He's got a 5-up ward save, 1-up armor save. Enemies will have to be hitting him at a 5-up at the best, and so this guy's an absolute beast. I really love seeing exactly what Gatorade can do in close combat. His mount is a Connoisseur named Powerade, and Powerade's got the Blood Roar as well as Loping Stride upgrades for that creature as well. Next on the right-hand side, that unit is called the Jurassic Jousters. You have 10 Colwyn Riders with Musician as well as Standard Bearer. They're also equipped with shields as well as spears, and they're running Colwyns. And next on the right hand side is the Bulbasaur, which is a Bastillodon upgraded with a solar engine. So making my center on the left-hand side of that unit is called the Guacamole Guards. The Guacamole Guards is a unit of 36 Temple Guards with full command. They also have halberds, light armor, as well as shields, as well as the standard discipline, giving them +1 to their leadership. Now the reason why that is the case is because in that unit as well is the general. That general's name is Kermit the Slan. Kermit the Slan is a Slan mage priest. He's the general of my army. He's also got the Battle Standard Bearer upgrade as well. He's a level 4 wizard with the lore of high magic. He's got his Loremaster ability as well as channeling staff to give him +1 to his channeling of tips. He's got Focus of Mystery, so that way he can load all the spells of the high magic, and at the same time Harmonic Convergence, that way he gets 2 additional dice for channeling, dispel dice, as well as power dice. And now right next to him on the right hand side, that unit is called the Saurus. It is a huge unit of 40 Saurus warriors with Musician and Standard Bearer. They're also equipped with spears as well as shields. And finally on the right hand side we have the Karma Chameleons, a unit of 24 skinks with full command. They're equipped with Lustrian javelins and shields. They also have 3 Croxagore armed with great weapons in that unit. And leading that unit are 2 of my wizards. I have Slag, who is a level 2 wizard who's a skink priest. Level 2 wizard, Lore of Beasts. He has Whiston's Wild Form as well as the Amber Spear. He's packing the Sword of Striking for +1 to hit, as well as a Cube of Darkness for the obvious dispel abilities. And then also I have Snarl, who's my second skink priest. He's level 1 wizard with the Lore of Heavens. He's packing the Comet of Cassandora as well as a Dispel Scroll and the Ruby Ring of Ruin. And that pretty much makes up my deployment on this one. So moving across the table for the deployment for House Lainel, the Silvery host of Caledor. For my buddy Fresh Prince Belair, Vanguard up for 12 inches, are 2 units of 5 Illyrian Reavers armed with spears, bows, and light armor. They're also mounted on Elven steeds. The left hand unit's called the Word Bearers, while the right hand unit's called the Silent Striders. Making up his left-hand flank on the top of the hill there, we have one of the Reigns of Caledor, which is an Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, and right next to him on the right-hand side are the Silver Sentinels, a unit of 10 Silver Helm Knights with full command. They have lances, heavy armor, as well as shields, and they're mounted on Barded War Horses. So moving on to the center deployment is where most of Fresh Prince Belair's units are located at. On the left-hand side we have a unit called the Everwardens, a unit of 25 Phoenix Guard with Musician and Standard Bearer. They're packing halberds as well as heavy armor, and they're also packing the Banner of Eternal Flames. Now right in the center there, that is a unit called the Loremaster's Rangers, a unit of 33 White Lions of Trace. They got full command, great weapons, heavy armor, as well as lion cloaks, and they're also packing the Banner of the World Dragon. And leading that unit as well are 2 different characters. We have Lord Tywin Lainel, the Silver Warden of Caledor. He is a High Elf Prince. He's also the General of the Army. He's got heavy armor as well as a lion cloak. He's also packing the Ogre Blade, giving him +2 to his strength, the Shield of Merwyrm, giving him 4 parry save, as well as the Talisman of Preservation, giving him 4 ward save. And then right next to him is Tytos Lainel, the Loremaster of Caledor. He is a Loremaster of Hoeth, a level 2 wizard with the lore of battle magic. He's also got great weapon as well as heavy armor. He's got the Book of Ashur, giving him +1 to cast spells and dispel, as well as a Talisman of Endurance, giving him a 5-up ward save. And finally on the right hand side we have called the Dawn Guard. He's going to have 23 Lothern Sea Guard with full command. They have spears, bows, light armor, as well as shields. And also leading that unit is Tanis Lainel, Captain of the Dawn Guard. He's a Lothern Sea Helm. He's also the Army's Battle Standard Bearer. He's got spear, light armor, as well as shield. And then on the right hand side of the upper hand corner on top of that tower we have the second of the Reigns of Caledor. And finally, on the right-hand side, on the right-hand flank, on the left-hand side, we have Rostam Lainel, who's a Dragon Mage of Caledor. He's a level 2 wizard with the Wizard of the Lore of Fire. He's got Fireball as well as Flaming Sword of Ruin. He's also got Dragon Armor. He's packing a Sword of Might, a Charm Shield, as well as a Ruby Ring of Ruin. And then right next to him on his mount is Pyrite, which is a Sun Dragon. And then finally, on the top right-hand side, we have the third of the Reigns of Caledor. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Fresh Prince Belair and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1, and the High Elves managed to get the initiative on this one, so Fresh Prince Belair will be going first. And as you can see in this photo, for the most part, not much in his army actually moves up forward. The only thing he does, he takes the Silent Striders, a unit of 5 Illyrian Reavers, and kind of wheels them slightly to the left, so that way they can open fire with their Elvish bows against my Charizards on the left-hand flank. The only real movement that takes place is with Rostam Lainel's Pyrite. His Dragon Mage actually does a March Fly, flying up 20 inches on the right-hand side of the battlefield, landing right between the Archer Grove as well as the hill on the right hand side of the battlefield. So here's a close-up of the Word Bearers as well as the Silent Striders getting ready to open fire with their bows directly into my Charizards on the left hand flank. And here's a close-up of the Silver Sentinels, the Everwardens, the Loremaster's Rangers, as well as the Dawn Guard, just kind of staying their ground because there's no reason for them to move. And finally, here's a close-up of Rostam Lainel as well as Pyrite flying over to the left right-hand side of the battlefield, getting ready to move on to my right-hand flank as well. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, my opponent actually did try to cast a couple of spells. He tried to cast Fireball, boosted version of Fireball, which I was able to dispel for the most part as well. But the one spell he was able to get, though, was the boosted version of Milkoth's Mystifying Miasma. And basically, when he rolled on that one, Freshman's Ballad actually rolled a 6 for the D3 roll on that one. So because of that, the Guacamole Guards suffer -3 to their weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative, as well as movement until the next magic phase. So that part's kind of a handicap. But luckily, though, I'm kind of still far away from the High Elves, so I still have to move across the battlefield to get to them, but it's kind of hindering my movement allowance. Luckily for me, though, I do have Walk Between Worlds, so hopefully I can use that spell or make these guys move quicker across the battlefield. So with the shooting phase, I actually got really lucky during the shooting phase. The first thing that ended up happening is that my buddy Freshman's Belair opens fire with all 3 of his Eagle Claw bolt throwers firing single bolts directly at Gatorade and Powerade. And I was absolutely terrified to see exactly what happened. But unfortunately for my buddy Freshman's Belair, though, he failed to hit roll with all 3 of those bolt throwers. So that part was absolutely insane. However, though, when it came to the Lizardmen Reavers, both units opened fire with their bows directly into the Charizards, actually putting 2 wounds on my guys. So that part was kind of rough. Meanwhile, on the right-hand flank, I do lose 2 of my Skink Warriors from the Karma Chameleons. That's because I got shot at by the Dawn Guard as well. But I got pretty lucky on that one because I do have the Aquatic Special rule. My guys are in the river, so they do get a -1 hit against me whenever they try to shoot at me. So combined with long range, as well as shooting up between them, they're having -2 to their hits. So that's the reason why so many of my Karma Chameleons survived. So at the end of the shooting phase, we skip close combat phase, and we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Lizardmen. Alright, so that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see, I don't waste any time by moving across the battlefield as quickly as I can. And the reason why that is the case is because I'm Lizardman. The closer I get to grips with my enemies, the better off I will actually be. So the first thing I actually do is I actually declare a charge with my Gatorade and Powerade, my Old Source Old Blood on a Carnosaur. I originally declared a charge against my opponent, who was on the right-hand side with his Silent Striders. Now, this is where my Blood War kind of kicks in effect, because what ends up happening is when I use Blood War, my opponent has to take an additional d6 for leadership tests, and then he takes the 2 highest is what ended up happening for that one. So for the very first unit that I actually went to do this to, managed to pass the terror check, no problem, so there was no harm, no foul there. So because of that, they decided to flee his reaction, and they got away pretty well, moving all the way to the base of the Silver Sentinels. Now, when it came to the second unit, though, which was the Word Bearers, I did my Blood Roar ability. Unfortunately for my friend, he actually failed his leadership test, so because of that, they flew back and had to go back almost the same amount of distance as the Silent Striders. Now, unfortunately for me, though, I did have to try to commit my charge to try to catch up to him. I failed my charge. I think I moved up 5 inches is what I ended up doing for that one as well. Now, I also tried to declare, because that charge failed, I decided just to kind of march everything up for the most part. I marched up my Jurassic Jousters up their maximum movement allowance, as well as the Bastiladon on the left-hand side. I also march up the Thesaurus on the right-hand side as well. And what I decided to do for my Skinks, on the other hand, though, I just kind of moved up their normal movement allowance by wheeling them to the right-hand side, so that way they could throw some poison javelins directly at Russell Lainel as well as Pyrite, because that 6 to wound is absolutely fantastic. I got so many javelins flying that way, I might be able to cause some harm. Now, I do try to march up the Guacamole Guards, but they only go up 2 inches because they're movement characteristic 1 right now, so that part was kind of rough. And then I marched through the Charizards over the fleeing units of Illyrian Reavers and landing right behind the Silver Sentinels. Now, the reason why I did that is because, unfortunately, I couldn't charge them because I vanguarded up, so because I couldn't charge against the fleeing unit of Illyrian Reavers, which would have been nice. So instead, I dropped rocks on them instead and managed to kill 3 of them, so that part was pretty cool. So here's a close-up of my Charizards lying right behind the Silver Sentinels, and also managed to kill 3 Illyrian Reavers by dropping rocks on them, which is absolutely fantastic. And here's a close-up of Gatorade and Powerade trying to catch up as quick as they can with the Jurassic Jousters, as well as the Bulbasaur. And here's a close-up of the Guacamole Guards as well as the Thesaurus marching up as quick as they can across the battlefield to close up with the High Elves. At the same time, you can see my Skink Warriors from the Karma Chameleons wheeling to the right-hand side to take some pot shots with some poison javelins. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So during the magic phase, I did manage to cast off the Comet of Caledor and put it right behind the main lines, right behind the Loremaster's Rangers. So hopefully that will motivate my opponent to leave his main battle line, because he doesn't want to get smashed with the Comet. Meanwhile, when it comes to the magic phase, I do magic cast Wiston's wild form directly onto my skinks, which is absolutely fantastic. So that part was really cool as well. Slag magic, get that Wiston's wild form, give them +1 strength, +1 toughness, which makes their javelins a little bit more deadly. And at the same time, Snarl is also kind of cool getting the combo to cast Doran off. However, there was a slight little hiccup in my plan of getting this spell cast. I was able to get it at Irresistible Force, and I miscast 9 on that bad boy.
Klaatu! Marada!
So because of that, both Slag as well as Snarl both take strength 6 hits. I managed to put 1 wound apiece on both of my Skink Priests, so that part was kind of rough. The big spell I was able to get off during this round, though, however, was Walk Between Worlds. I did manage to cast that. Kermit the Slan managed to cast that spell directly onto the Guacamole Guards, so because of that, it was just the normal version of it. So because of that, the Guacamole Guards move up 10 inches and stand toe-to-toe alongside with the source on the right-hand side as well. So with the move phase, magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, the Karma Chameleons were able to put 4 wounds directly onto the Dragon Pyrite, which is absolutely fantastic. So because we're shooting at both characters, we had to randomize our shot. Most of the shots went directly into Pyrite, and I rolled a bunch of 6s, which is really awesome as well. Unfortunately for First Prince Belair, he rolled a bunch of 1s and basically 1s and 2s for the most part. And the reason why is because his armor save of 3 up had to go up to a 4 up because of my +1 strength bonus for my javelins, which is really, really nice as well. So he dropped the ball on a lot of those shots, managed to put 4 wounds on the dragon, and behold, the power of poison attacks. So with the shooting phase over with, we skip the combat phase because no one's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the High Elves. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the High Elves, and once again this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see in this photo, not much of the High Elves have actually moved. The only real dramatic move that's taking place is pretty much on the flanks. So first of all, the Word Bearers as well as the Silent Shredders do manage to reform real quick. They turn 180 degrees to face off against my advancing forces. At the same time, Fresh Prince Belair also March Flies Pyrite as well as Roasted Lainel over to the left-hand side, right behind my main battle lines, which is actually pretty scary. And the reason why is because having a dragon looking at the really back end of your army is never a good thing, especially since it could breathe fire at you or charge you. And right now I'm starting to realize that my opponent's planning on capturing my Lizardmen into a pincer attack. Luckily though, I do have some options that I could use in order to fight against my opponent. I do have magic I could use, and I also still have my skinks. My skinks could do a quick combat swift freeform real quick, using the position to turn 180, and I can actually open fire my javelins because of the quick to fire rules. So if all else fails, I could probably do that and cause some damage that way. So with the move phase over with, we go to let's go and talk about some of the close-ups. So here's a close-up of the Word Bearers as well as the Silent Striders turning 180 degrees in order to face off against Gatorade, Powerade, as well as my Jurassic Jousters. And here's a close-up of the Ever Wardens as well as the Lord Master's Rangers as well as the Dawn Guard standing their ground getting ready to just hold the line as long as they possibly can. And finally, here's a close-up of Roasted Lainel as well as Pyrite threatening the rear ranks of my main battle line. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during magic phase, Loremaster Tytos Lainel was able to get 2 spells off. The first one he was able to get off was Wiston's Wild Form, which he put directly onto the Dawn Guard, giving those guys +1 strength as well as +1 toughness. Looks like my opponent's either planning to charge forward with these guys to put the pressure on my Source Warriors, or basically just kind of holding them back and getting them ready in case I manage to charge forward. At the same time, he also managed to put Life Bloom directly onto his Loremaster's Rangers as well, so that White Lions have a 5-up regen now, so which makes them really good. So 5-up regen, 2 up against magical attacks, heavy armor, lion cloaks. They're pretty much solid for the most part. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. So once again, during the shooting phase, I got extremely lucky during the shooting phase. So the first thing that ends up happening is, of course, that First Prince Belair has 2 of his Reigns of Caledor open fire with their bolt throwers, once again firing a massive bolt directly at Powerade as well as Gatorade. Luckily for me, First Prince Belair flubbed his hit roll, so because of those 2 shots missed for the most part. Now the third Reign of Caledor, which is the third Eagle Claw bolt throw on the top of the hill on the left-hand side, it turns order to face down my Charizards, opens fire with multi-shots, firing 6 smaller bolts directly into my Charizards. Managed to kill one of my Charizards right off the bat. Luckily for me though, my Pterodons actually held their ground because of the Cold Blood rule, which was really, really nice. So because of that, they didn't have to worry about panicking or escaping. And once again, I got extremely lucky over here on the right-hand side. The Karma Chameleons are targeted by the Dawn Guard, open fire with their bows, and luckily for me, only 2 more of my skinks actually got killed, which is absolutely fantastic. That aquatic rule is really helping me out with that -1 hit against with this river, so that part is super nice as well. So the shooting phase over with, we skip the combat phase because no one's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2. Alright, so we go directly to the bottom, turn number 2 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and the first thing I decided to do real quick is I decided to declare a charge, is what I decided to do. So the first thing I do is I declare a charge with the Jurassic Jousters. My Jurassic Jousters have no problem smashing directly into what's left of the Word Bearers and cast those 2 Silvery Reavers in close combat. After that part got completed, what I decided to do next was to declare a charge with my Carnosaur. So the first thing I did, of course, is that I declare a charge against the Word Bearers. Now the Word Bearers, of course, had to take the Blood Roar test. They failed their Terror test and they actually fled. So because of that, they're fleeing away and they actually bumped up to the top of the hill there. Now instead of declaring my charge, since they decided to flee as a reaction to that, I decided to declare a charge directly against the Silver Sentinels, and the Silver Sentinels actually failed their leadership test too, and they actually ran back. And this is where the situation gets kind of interesting on this point. So when they were running back, they actually ran directly through the Charizards, because the Charizards were right behind them. So they had to take dangerous terrain tests, and 4 of those guys ended up being killed during that process. So that part was absolutely insane. Now, I couldn't get my charges off against my targets, so because of that, I fell my charge. I think moved over like 3 inches when I ended up doing for my Carnosaur for the most part, so that part was kind of sad. However, my Charizards decided to declare a charge against the fleeing Word Bearers, and they actually overran those guys and managed to kill those last of those Illyrian Reavers, which is absolutely nice. That was absolutely fantastic on that part. Now, meanwhile, in the center of the table, the first thing I try to do is I do declare a charge with the Thesaurus. I charge my Thesaurus and declare my charge directly into the Dawn Guard. Unfortunately for me, though, I do fail my charge, and I think I'll go up 4 inches when I end up doing, so because I just kind of stumbled forward for the most part. So because of that, instead of charging up with my Temple Guards, because I don't want them fighting unsupported, I just marched them up directly next to the Thesaurus, and hopefully be able to get my charge off next turn, and then I bring up the Bastilla in order to bring up and protect my left-hand flank of the Temple Guards that I have for the Guacamole Guards. And the last thing I do, of course, I do a quick swift reform with my Musician in my unit of Karma Chameleons. Those guys do a swift reform to face 180 degrees, and they be able to shoot with their javelins in the next shooting phase, and hopefully put some pressure on Lainel and Pyrite in the bottom of the screen. So here's a close-up of the move phase from my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air. As you can see, he basically lost 4 Silverhelm Knights running through the Charizards as they're trying to escape from the wrath that is Gatorade as well as Powerade, which is absolutely hilarious. And here's a close-up of my failed charge going forward with Powerade as well as Gatorade, as well as my Charizards who flew past the Word Bearers and slaughtered those guys to the last man. And then finally, there's a close-up of my Jurassic Jousters going directly against the Illyrian Reavers and getting ready to kill the last of the Silent Striders. And here's a close-up of the Bulbasaur, the Guacamole Guards, as well as the Saurus as they're making their way directly towards the High Elf battle line. And finally, here's a close-up of the Karma Chameleons turning 180, so that way they can open fire with their javelins directly into Pyrite as well as Lainel. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, I had Slag cast the Amber Spear, the boosted version of the Amber Spear, directly towards, directly towards Pyrite, which was the Sun Dragon. And I managed to get that spell off the boosted version as well, so because I was able to kill that dragon right off the bat, which is absolutely fantastic. The only problem was that in order to get that spell, I had to do it with Irresistible Force, and because of that, I rolled a miscast 11 on this one.
Klaatu! Marada!
So because of that, Slag is now a level 1 wizard who only knows Whistle's wild form. At the same time, I also lost the Amber Spear. But I will take it because I was able to kill a Sun Dragon with it, which is absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, on the top of the screen, the Comet cometh, which is absolutely fantastic. So as you can see, the Comet of Caledor does crash down and actually blows up, which is absolutely fantastic. In the end, I was able to kill off 6 members of the, on the right-hand side, I was able to kill 6 members of the Dawn Guard, which is absolutely fantastic. Managed to kill 3 White Lions as well. And the reason why is because my opponent just kind of flubbed his rolls for the most part. Rolled a bunch of 1s for the ward saves from that magical attack. So because of that, 3 of them do die, which is kind of sad for my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air. At the same time, I think he also loses 3 members of the Everwardens as well from the Comet of Caledor, which is absolutely fantastic. So the magic phase over with, they go directly to the shooting phase, and once again the Karma Chameleons take aim with their javelins and open fire directly onto Lainel. Unfortunately for my opponent, there were just too many shots coming his way and not enough armor saves or ward saves in order to save him. So because that, Lainel does get killed, and once again the Dragon Mage returns back from whence he comes. So during the combat phase, I had no problem whatsoever wiping out the very last of the Illyrian Reapers, so because of that, my Jurassic Jousters do overrun, and my plan was to actually overrun directly towards the Silver Sentinels, and hopefully I could overtake them and destroy that unit as well in one fell swoop. Unfortunately for me though, as I measured out 4 to go forward, I realized I was going to clip directly into the Ever Wardens, which are the High Elf Phoenix Guards down the right hand side, so because of that now my Jurassic Jousters engage in close combat with Phoenix Guard, which is really bad for me. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the High Elves. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 3 for the High Elves, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and with a yellow in the air, my buddy Fresh Prince Belair decides to declare charges. He declares charges first with the Dawn Guard, who go directly into the source and catching those guys right in the front. At the same time, he also declared a charge with the Loremaster's Rangers and successfully lands it directly into my Guacamole Guards. So that part is kind of rough as well. So I'm really interested to see exactly how my Temple Guard do against White Lions. So it'll be kind of interesting to see exactly how that works out. Meanwhile, the Ever Wardens are still engaged in close combat with my Jurassic Jousters because I clipped into them where I overran. At the same time, the very last thing he does manage to rally the Silver Sentinels, who do a 180 at the very back edge of the table. So here's a close-up of the move phase with the Silver Sentinels turning 180 and managed to rally before they fly off the table. At the same time, the Ever Wardens are currently engaged in close combat with the Jurassic Jousters. At the same time, the Loremaster's Rangers have collided correctly in close combat with the Guacamole Guards, and the Dawn Guard are going against the Source as well. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And unfortunately for the magic phase, my buddy actually rolls Snake Eyes on that one, so because of that, magic phase does not exist right now for my friend Fresh Prince Belair, which is kind of sad. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And once again, during the shooting phase, got extremely lucky again. My buddy Fresh Prince Belair, man, he's been having no luck today at all with the Reigns of Caledor, which is kind of crazy because the Reigns of Caledor are usually really good at sniping monsters. It's just that for whatever reason, my buddy Fresh Prince Belair, his dice are just abandoning today. He does manage to hit me once with one of the bolts. The two of them, I think one actually misses is what ended up happening. The second one I think hit, but I managed to ward save it. I think the third one was the one that finally slipped through. But to make things just to add insult to injury, my buddy O'Death rolled the D3 to see exactly how many wounds he causes. He only causes 1 wound. So because that Gatorade and Powerade are perfectly fine and getting ready to cause some more chaos. Meanwhile, the fight between the Jurassic Jousters as well as the Ever Wardens was pretty good, all things considered. I do lose 2 of my Jurassic Jousters, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, though, I managed to kill 6 Phoenix Guard, which is absolutely fantastic. That's just unheard of for my Jurassic Jousters to have such a good roll directly against the Phoenix Guard. So because of this, my opponent, of course, obviously loses the fight. My opponent obviously does not have to worry about taking any any combat resolution, because the reason why is even though I kill a lot of guys, he still has more ranks than I do. So because of that, he is steadfast, so he pretty much is stubborn for this part. So because he passes his break test no problem, I take leadership to do a combat reform, and by doing the combat reform I do maximize my front arc directly against the Phoenix Guard. So hopefully I'll have another successful close combat rounds, and hopefully I'll be able to destroy the Phoenix Guard once and for all. So with that, we go directly to the combat here in the middle of the table, and this part was absolutely fantastic in terms of the bloodbath that was pretty much done. Pretty much for the most part, what ended up happening is that my buddy Fresh Prince Belair managed to kill 10 of my Temple Guard. I was able to kill 8 of his White Lions as well. If I remember correctly, I believe I lose this fight by I think 1 or 2 points that ended up happening, but it didn't really matter though, and the reason why is because I actually ended up having one more, I believe it was actually one more rank. No, I remember what it was. It's because I got the stubborn special rules because of Temple Guard with a Slan Mage Priest in their ranks right there. So that part was kind of nice. So because of that, we decided to go another round of combat with these 2 units. Meanwhile, combat between the Saurus as well as the Dawn Guard was an absolute bloodbath. In the end, my opponent was able to kill 5 of my Saurus warriors, which was okay. You know, I got 35 more left to go. I, on the other hand, was able to kill 12 of the Dawn Guard. So needless to say, I won this combat by a landslide. My opponent basically had to roll Snake Eyes for instance, to encourage to stand his ground. And unfortunately for Fresh Prince Belair, though, he fails to do that. He flees, I think, 6 inches, but I pursue 9. So just like that, the Saurus go charging forward and just end up destroying every single last member of the Dawn Guard, as well as kill Tanis, Lainel, the captain of the Dawn Guard, destroying my opponent's Battle Standard Bearer at exactly the same time. And things are looking pretty good, all things considered. So with that, we go directly to the bottom number 3 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the movement phase, and I decide to start swarming my opponent and start taking it to them. The first thing I do, of course, I declare a charge with the Charizards and go directly into one of the reigns of Caledor on the top of the hill there, and engage that unit in close combat. At the same time, I also declare a charge with Gatorade and Powerade, who go directly into the left-hand flank of the Wardens, catching those guys in a pincer attack between my Jurassic Jousters as well as Gatorade and Powerade. Meanwhile, I then declare another charge with my Bastiladon. The Bulbasaur goes to the left-hand flank of the Loremaster's Rangers. I do Swift Reform with my Thesaurus to face against the right-hand flank of the Loremaster's Rangers. Hopefully I can get them in a full envelopment. And then, of course, I also kind of wheel march my my Karma Chameleons along the river, heading directly towards my opponent's 2 Bolt Throwers in the upper right-hand corner. So here's a close-up of the Charizards, getting ready to bring the pain on one of the reigns of Caledor, which is located up here on the top of the hill. And here's a close-up of Gatorade, Powerade, as well as Jurassic Jousters getting ready to bring the pain for the Wardens. And here's a close-up of the Bulbasaur as well as the Temple Guard of the Guacamole Guards getting ready to bring the pain directly onto the Loremaster's Rangers. And you can see right there on the right-hand side of the source are getting ready to do a right-hand flank charge. And finally, here's a close-up of my Skink Warriors from the Karma Chameleons, moving up as quick as they can along the right-hand flank of the river, heading directly towards the other 2 members of the Reigns of Caledor. So during the magic phase, I actually cast Regrowth, and the reason why is because the Slann actually have a really interesting game mechanic when it comes to their lore attribute for the Lore of Heavens. Apparently, once you cast a Lore of High Magic, apparently during the last turn when I cast my Lore of High Magic, I could actually choose to forget a spell, which I decided to do, and I can replace it with any spell from any of the other Lores of Magic I was able to have access to for my Slann Mage Priest, which is pretty much all the Lores of Battle Magic. So I decided to use Regrowth from Lore of Life onto my unit. I was able to bring back a big chunk of my Source Warriors. I actually cast the boosted version of that spell. I managed to get 7 of my guys back, which is absolutely fantastic. So not 7. I managed to get 4 members back for my Guacamole Guards, which is absolutely fantastic. So because of that, brought back some of my losses, get ready to bring the pain once again onto the Loremaster's Rangers. And for my last spell, I was able to cast the spell Walk Between Worlds. I casted the boosted version of that for my Skinks and have them basically move all the way to the left-hand side of the battlefield 20 inches, so that way they can start heading directly towards the back of the Loremaster's Rangers as well. And since everything is engaged in close combat, we skip the shooting phase and go directly to the combat phase. As you can see in this photo, combined attacks between the Jurassic Jousters as well as Gatorade and Powerade resulted in killing about 7 Phoenix Guard, which is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately for my opponent though, he just was unable to get past my toughness and my armor saves, so because I took no wounds whatsoever. Needless to say, the Wardens lost this fight by the landslide. They fled, I pursued. So I decided to pursue with Gatorade and Powerade, who actually ran up all the way to the end of the table as well and ran down the Phoenix Guard and killed them all. I think the Phoenix Guard fled, 7 or 8 inches, I think is when they were going, but Gatorade ran like full-blown boxcar, so because of that, Gatorade and Powerade run off the edge of the table, killing every single last member of the Wardens down. I then do a quick combat reform with the Jurassic Jousters, having turn 180 to kind of face against the Loremaster's Rangers. And unfortunately for my opponent, the Charizards managed to destroy one of the Reigns of Caledor, and just like that, that Bolt Thrower is now dead. So we were going to finish up the combat phase between the Guacamole Guard as well as the Loremaster's Rangers, but at this point though, my buddy decided to kind of call the game for the most part, because if you look at this photo, this pretty much tells you everything that's going to happen here in a second. So even if Fresh Prince Belair, however, was able to survive combat with the Guacamole Guards, as well as my Bulbasaur attacking from the left-hand flank, he's going to have a full, complete envelopment here in a second, because what's going to happen is I'm going to send in my Jurassic Jousters, they'll hit his left-hand flank, my Thesaurus will hit his right-hand flank, and then finally my Karma Chameleons will come up right behind him and get him there in a total envelopment, and so there's no way to be able to win that combat as well at all. So because of that, he pretty much calls the game at this point. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That pretty much takes us directly to the end of the game with the Lizardmen pulling off another victory on this one. So with that being said, we're going to go directly to the after action report, because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king.
Hail to the king, baby.
Alright folks, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 129, and this one ended up being a victory for yours truly. In the end, I was able to score 2,185 victory points, while my friend Fresh Prince Belair scored 0. So let's talk about my losses real quick. So the reason why my opponent just scored 0 points is because I didn't actually take any losses in this battle report. He caused a lot of damage in a lot of my units though, but he wasn't able to destroy any of them, and that's the reason why I didn't get any victory points on this one. At the same time, Fresh Prince Belair, however, he lost Tanis Lainel, the Captain of the Dawn Guard, Rosa Lainel and Pyrite, the Silver Sentinels, the Word Bearers, the Silent Striders, the Dawn Guard, the Ever Wardens, as well as one of the members of the Reigns at Caledor. I won this battle report for one simple reason. That's because Fresh Prince Belair's dice abandoned him in this battle report. Normally, whenever you're facing against 3 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, that pretty much dominates the shooting phase, and you can really kill off a lot of monsters and large targets when you have 3 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers on this one. Gatorade and Powerade, by all rights, should have been dead a long time ago in this battle report. Unfortunately, Fresh Prince Belair's dice just wouldn't cooperate. He couldn't land blows, he couldn't land hits, he couldn't land wounds, so because of that, I was pretty much free to let my monster do whatever I want on the left-hand flank of the battlefield. Not to mention, my infantry units are also very large in this this current army, which kind of helps them from being destroyed by my opponents. So because of that, that's the reason why my opponents haven't been able to get any victory points so far, is because they just haven't been able to destroy my units because they're just too large at this point. And that's really important strategy to use, especially when you consider the quality of the troops in my army. My army is primarily made up of lower tiered miniatures, and the reason why that is the case is because it's made up of miniatures that I could get at the price that I could get them at, which explains why my army's composition is not very orthodox looking for most Lizardmen armies, and that's why. I mean, I don't have any Stegodons, for example, and the reason why is because I just didn't want to spend any money to buy Stegodons when I could just use cheaper miniatures instead for other things, and that's the reason why the army is made up the way that it is. At the same time, magic was also another contributing factor in my victory on this one. I was having a pretty good magic phase during this game, while my buddy Fresh Prince Belair struggled for the most part, and because of that, he's actually thinking about changing up his army list a little bit. Originally, he liked having, he's actually thinking about his Loremaster, taking it out and actually replacing with archmages as well as mages instead. And the reason why is because having a fighting mage and as well as a general who's a prince for kitted for combat, while it may sound cool, it just seems a little too much combat oriented for the most part. So because he's going to want to have a better magic boosting abilities as well, so he's actually thinking about just having dedicated mages and then leave the combat to his general to do the close combat for the most part. And that's pretty much what he's planning on doing here in a second. Either way though, this was an extremely fun game against an excellent opponent, and as always, I am looking forward to the rematch. Currently, this Lizardmen army is at 2 wins as well as 0 losses, and right now I'm having a blast playing with these guys. They're a lot of fun to play, and I'm really glad we actually went about and took a risk to make this army happen. So that's good for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is valuable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.